My name's Martin Hinshelwood. I'm a little bit of a strange character. I've been here to Australia before. I used to work for SSW, for Adam Cogan. I think I lasted about 8 months, but it was a fun gig. And then I went to the States to work with Stephen Borg at Northwest Cadence. And then I came back to Scotland, which is where I live, to start my own company. So I am a Visual Studio ALM MVP. So I work with Microsoft a lot, but I'm also a Scrum trainer with scrum.org. Now that's actually a pretty unusual combination worldwide, because most of the tools guys really hate the process guys, and the process guys really hate the tools guys. There's a little bit of a contention there. But like I said, I'm from this little place above England that most people call England, but it's actually another place called Scotland. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of an issue just now. I don't know if anybody's seen the current political situation, but it's kind of a little bit like this. Yeah, it's not good. Did anybody see how the votes went? Broken up into constituencies. Did you see how many constituencies in Scotland voted to leave? Not a single one. But most of England did. Actually, London wants to break away from England now as well. That's pretty interesting. But this actually is interesting for me. Everybody's been asking about it, which is why I put it in there. But my business is I do very little business in the UK. I travel around the world, lots of different customers, some large customers that are everywhere, and it's an interesting situation. So what I find happens most of the time is we want this thing called Scrum. Anybody here doing Scrum? Okay. Are you doing professional Scrum? You think you're doing professional Scrum. I've seen your Scrum. So what we start with is we're doing this. We start with Scrum. Yeah? We follow the rules. There's a little rule book. Anybody read the Scrum guide? It's like the rule book. If you were bought Monopoly, you don't expect it to come with a strategy guide. You expect it to come with a rule book. So it comes with a rule book, and then you can add whatever strategies make sense for your organization, your culture. You can use Kanban to help formulate your process, change stuff. But Scrum's just a framework to help you get started. Is it a unicorn for you guys? Because what does Scrum end up like? Anybody know? So most Scrums I see end up like a little bit of a car wreck. Nobody was injured in the making of this shot, by the way. So we're missing something. And one of the things we're missing is technical excellence. We're missing that technical excellence in a lot of organizations. Now we're adding this thing called DevOps. Used to be called ALM, now it's called DevOps. Who cares what the word is? Yeah? It's a set of practices that we can choose to do or not to help us achieve the goal, which is working software as quickly as possible. Then we know what Scrum kind of mandates as the maximum amount of time it should take you to build working software. 30 days. You should be creating working software and getting it in front of your customers at least every 30 days. That doesn't mean you can't ship more frequently. Yeah, if you want to ship every day, that's okay too. But at least every 30 days. But to get there, man, you can't just make that happen. We've got complicated software. We're going to need to get feedback from our stakeholders. We're going to need usage monitoring. We're going to need continuous delivery and continuous integration and all the other DevOps practices, automated testing. If you've got to do 6 weeks of automated tests, can you deliver working software in 30 days? No. So we've got to get there. So that's one of the things that's missing. But anybody been implementing DevOps? Or what people call DevOps? Okay. Have we just found another unicorn? But this is a better unicorn. Executives love this unicorn, because this unicorn gives us something extra, and we're eating it up, and we're giving it to our team. And they're expected to just run with it. But that's not everything. Did you notice on my diagram there's another space? We need values and principles. We need some guidance to help us in choices we make. If we've got a piece of software that we've been working on for the last 30 days, and we haven't quite managed to get all the tests finished, should we ship it to production? Simple test. These are the core values and principles in Scrum, laid out in the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide didn't actually include the values and principles explicitly up until 2 weeks ago. That was a big update 2 weeks ago, big announcement, and they've added them in. Is shipping software that hasn't been tested to your customer respectful to your customer? Is it open and transparent about what's in your software and how it works? No, so we shouldn't be doing it. Do you want your organization and your people and your culture to embody these values or the opposite of these values? Because I sure want these values in my teams and teams I work with. And I don't know any organization that would say, hell no, we don't want respect. We want to put people down as much as possible. But are these there in your organization? Does your development teams have the courage to say no to customers that are asking for things that are just not physically possible? Do you make guarantees to your customers that you'll be able to deliver software that doesn't exist yet to the features they require on time and on budget? Is that respectful to them, to their business, to risks that they take? This is important. It's a big deal. So we kind of need three things. We need three things to create that professional Scrum team that I mentioned at the start, rather than that Scrum.org likes to call them amateur Scrum teams. I usually use the word mechanical Scrum teams. Ken likes flaccid Scrum teams. But they're just cowboys. They're just cowboys. So if we want professional teams, we need some sort of process. You can actually replace the word Scrum with the word Kanban as it applies to software teams or anything else out there. Scrum's just the most common thing that people are doing. We then need technical excellence, and we need values and principles to make decisions by, to help guide us to doing the right thing. But that's awesome for one team. Now we've got a professional team. Now we can think about scaling. Because what happens if you take 5 teams of cowboys and try and put them together and build one piece of software? Anybody got that scenario in the office? Doesn't end up well, we don't get good software. But if we've got professional teams, we can start scaling. But again, we need a little bit of guidance. We've got Scrum to help guide a Scrum team, but don't we need more communication if we have more Scrum teams working together, more teams of people? We don't want things falling through the cracks. Might we have integration and dependencies between the teams? We're creating one piece of working software at the end, and if we have 5 teams working together, how do we guarantee at the end of 30 days we have one piece of working software? It's hard. So we kind of need some extra help. Scrum.org has been using a framework for quite a while now called the Nexus Framework, which is using Scrum to scale Scrum. This is the same diagram as before. We've just added some extra points of communication and things that have to happen, the minimum things that have to happen to main communication. Is this everything? No, we still need continuous integration. We need all of those DevOps practices. We need to test automation. We need all of those things. But we've got some things, I usually call them team of teams. Are you familiar with who are the right people for your team of teams? Is what I usually get, and it's whoever turns up. Yeah, are the right people. Same as open space rules, whoever turns up are the right people. And we're gonna have to get together before our sprint planning and have a discussion about integration and dependencies. Teams send representatives. All of the places where you see Nexus Daily Scrum, before the retrospective, after the retrospective, it's a group of people that are representatives of this community of developers that come together, discuss dependencies, problems, issues, bring that knowledge back to the rest of the team. Because the teams have to deal with it. What happens if you create do anybody have a separate DevOps team here who's responsible for integration and build and all of those things? Nobody? Do you know what happens if you have that? Anybody here have kids? Right? Do you clean up their room for them, or do you make them clean it up? What are they less likely to do if they know they have to clean it up? Make a mess. Developers need to clean up their own mess, need to sort out their own problems. They need to be responsible and held responsible and accountable for delivering working software at the end of every iteration. To do that, they're going to need help. So you might have some kind of integration team. You might call it a DevOps team, or you might call it a build team, or whatever you call it within your organization. But that team is not responsible and accountable for doing the work. They're a team of coaches and mentors who have understanding of DevOps. They might be another team of teams. Yeah, they might not be full-time. I was speaking earlier to some of the guys. I work with customers that have 70 teams working in 9 different countries on the same product. They have a dedicated team to help with that. And that team helps the other teams understand why the build was broken, to figure out of the 70 teams who actually broke the build, and help them figure out how to fix it. They very rarely fix it for those teams. They go help them figure out how to fix it themselves. But it's difficult. There's a good temptation to do it yourself. But we need these extra moments where we can get together and communicate. And in order to manage this, we maybe need some extra help. Anybody here use stickies on a whiteboard to manage their Scrum process? I do. That's the best way to manage and monitor your Scrum process. A digital tool is not the best way. However, if you've got teams across multiple locations, you're kind of stuck. How do you know what's going on? How do you get transparency across multiple countries? We need to put our data somewhere. And for that, we need tools. Most of my customers, being that I'm an ALM MVP, I'm going to be using TFS or VSTS. I always recommend VSTS, unless there's another reason. And VSTS supports Nexus and many other frameworks. And we can have multiple agile teams inside of a single team project. So we're not talking about collections, a single team project inside a collection for TFS, or a single team project inside an account for VSTS. And I can have one or more teams inside that team project. But what I might want to do is have another team inside of TFS that kind of looks at everything. I want to see one unified backlog for everything that's going on. And I want to iterate on that backlog as I have one product owner who needs to see a view of the whole thing. But then my product owner might roll up to the rest of product management, and I need to understand how portfolio works in that situation. I might be managing my investments that break down into things that are going to end up on my backlog. As they get closer to time, they're refined to action and then end up on the team's backlog. Yeah? If you're using VSTS right, or TFS correctly, you pick the Scrum template as your default. If you pick the Agile template, that's fun. It's not very agile. You can read my blog for the issues I have with that. I always recommend the Scrum template to start with. So we have a work item called a product backlog item. That product backlog item is your backlog. Both at the low level and the unified level, we have backlog items. They break down into tasks. These are the execution items that the team are going to execute against. This is the plan that the teams are going to use to execute those items. But if we're rolling up to portfolio, we might have features. And in fact, out of the box in VSTS, you'll have feature sitting there as well. Yeah? You don't have to use it. In fact, I would recommend if you can get away with not using it, don't use it. But if you have to have it, have it. So what we can do then is we can have our many teams backlogs. We can have our kind of parent portfolio team that sees the full backlog or is looking at features here. And I can take one of those features and I can break it down in a bunch of backlog items, put it on the backlog for the teams for them to pull from. Each team's going to pull items into their sprint, but they need to know what they can pull from so we can put those things on the team's backlog for them to pull them into the sprint. And we can have a link between those items back to the feature, so you as a product owner or your product management can go and look at an item and see, well, this item's in progress. How in progress is it? Open it out. Oh, there's 20 PBIs. 5 of them are assigned to a team. 2 of them are in progress. The other ones are on a team's backlog. Awesome, there's some stuff going on. It's been started, or it's been finished, or what's left to do. Get an understanding of that. And obviously, you can have multiple things, each thing on your backlog broken down and assigned to the teams. Now, one thing that's coming in VSTS, that's not quite there yet, but is more advanced in TFS, or more advanced. It's the old way of doing things. You can have more customizations in TFS right now. They're bringing a lot of those customizations to VSTS, but you might need more levels. If you have a very large organization and you have people that are managing at the epic level, big things that can't even fit in a release, and they get broken down into features, things that can fit in a release but can't fit in a sprint, all the way down to PBIs that are things that can fit in a sprint. We need to manage that all the way up, and there might be different people managing those backlogs. Hopefully there's alignment, and the more backlogs you have, the more obfusion you have from the idea at the top and the execution at the bottom, which is bad. Minimize your hierarchy. And what you get out of the box, although we said we only see feature, you can go into the options and you can tick the box to show epic. So out of the box in VSTS, you get epic, feature, product backlog item, and task. That's a lot of hierarchy. You can have more. I would say don't. The only reason Microsoft implemented 7 levels of hierarchy is because they had teams internally that were doing that. Is it a good idea? No. Are they doing it the same way now? No. That was Microsoft of 2005. Microsoft of 2016 is very agile. So we've got our standard DevOps cycle that you've seen in every talk about DevOps. You have development, deployment, ops cycle, feedback into the backlog. And then we're going to iterate on this team backlog to make it as powerful as possible, rolling up to our product backlog, iterating on that, rolling up to portfolio, iterating on that. The plan is created over time, and we have some way to manage that and understand what's going on. And that lets us roll up to this idea of Nexus. That was a bad noise. Okay. Is there any questions on the Nexus framework? Because what I'm going to dive into is how you go implement that in VSTS. Yes?
The team representatives, is that the same thing as the Nexus integration team, or are they two different?
So again, I would say it's whoever turns up is the right people. If you think about if I'm doing some pre-work around analyzing dependencies before my sprint planning meeting, or the teams go off and do their own sprint planning meeting, I probably need my product owner, I probably need representatives from the team. Which representatives do you need? Maybe depends on the sprint goals, maybe depends on what work you're doing just now, who's the most knowledgeable in those areas. Yeah.
Whereas the Nexus integration team is a fixed group of people.
So I see it both ways. It can be a fixed group of people that are 100% dedicated. It can be a fixed group of people that just are full-time members of the team and do that as well. Yeah. Or it can be interchangeable too. We want to spread that knowledge within the team, and can the testers bring something to our DevOps pipeline? Sure, because we've got tests in our DevOps pipeline, we've got automation. Who's the right people this sprint? Who are the right people at this time to turn up at that event? Does that make sense? Yeah.
You mentioned multiple product backlogs, like a product backlog for each team.
Sure.
I haven't heard of that.
So I have a single unified product backlog for my product owner. That's where things are ordered. When I go into my Nexus planning meeting, I probably want to understand what's going to be maybe in the pool of work. So while it's a single list, I might want to look at what's in the pool of work for this team versus that team, Because while we want teams of feature teams that are generalists, quite often we've got specialist teams. I work with a team in Norway, and they have multiple teams that build hydrodynamic models of ships that run inside a simulator. The guys that build the cranes that sit on oil rigs and ships inside of the simulator can't go build those models, and these guys can't go build the cranes. They have everybody on their team they need to build those features in those areas, but cross-skilling is very expensive because these guys all have PhDs in hydrodynamics, and these guys understand control systems and control runs and electrics. Very different skill sets. Yeah, so it depends what type of software you're building. Make sense? Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. So what I want to do is show you some ways to configure that inside of VSTS. I'm going to use the out-of-the-box VSTS functionality, mainly because you can do other customizations inside of TFS that you can't do in VSTS. So what I'm going to show can be applied to both. Okay. So I have an account called Practical DevOps inside of VSTS. And in there, I have a demo project with multiple teams set up. So if I open this project, and hopefully the internet gods will be on my side. Here is my portfolio project, my portfolio team. So this is the team that is set as the default team for the team project. So when I go in, I see stuff that maybe the team doesn't necessarily care about, but somebody looking at the big picture might care about. So here I'm seeing the amount of effort, total amount of effort inside the team backlogs. So they've got compartmentalized. Maybe we've already decided up front which team might do it. Maybe we've not. But we've got things, Scrum Dogs has 22 effort points currently sitting in their backlog and 1 bug, 1 point worth of bug. I might be looking at the value here, and although Scrum Dogs have only 22 effort points, they have the highest amount of value in the items in their backlog. So maybe I'm going to look at how much value each team is producing. And then I've got just work items by type. So they've got 4 items that make up all of that value. So it gives me some understanding of what's going on, who's working on what at really high level. Just because it's low value doesn't mean it's not worth anything. Order and priority are different from value. I've got test results trends because I'm interested in that. As a product owner, I would hope quality is important to me. I've also got in sprint, how many tests are not run past failing, and I'm not sure what that word is, blocked. So I can see that I've only got a few tests passed. There's 24 tests still not been run. So depending on where you are in your sprint cycle, might depend on whether that's a good sign or a bad sign. How are things going? Just an indicator. 4 open bugs, that's bad, it's not 0. Anybody have more than 0 bugs in their system at the end of a sprint? Try and get to 0. It's hard. I work with orgs that they have a rule that all bugs must be closed by the end of the sprint. So if that means we don't get backlog items done because we end up spending more time on bugs, that's fine. As 0 bugs that we know about should be left in the system. Now they do have exceptions to that. Anybody at Adam's session earlier? Rules are for the guidance of wise men and the obedience of fools. I would say don't have any bugs, but then reality comes to the party. Does that make sense there as a dashboard for that group? I just created that quickly. I've got an overview dashboard. I can add multiple dashboards to that, things that they care about from different perspectives. Okay.
Your team effort there, is that velocity from previous sprints or the current sprint?
No, this is backlog. So I'm looking at the entire backlog, what we've got in there, and how much effort and value, and then it's already been compartmentalized to the team. But if you see something in there that's the same name as the team project, maybe it's off the bottom there because it would mean it's not assigned to anybody yet. There's a little trick in VSTS. There's a new field called node name. Node name is the lowest level area path value. so that you don't have to have the area path here. You can have the lowest node name, which is usually your team, and then you can filter by team. You can do stuff by team. Yeah, makes it super easy. So if I go to my work, and I'm going to look at my backlog, I have a backlog with a whole bunch of stuff in it. I think there's about 200 things in this backlog. Not all of them are assigned out. Assigned out is the wrong word. I'm not assigning work to teams. I'm putting things on a team's backlog, i.e. their pull list. They're not going to pull from the main backlog. They're going to pull from what the product owner says are good things for them to maybe go work on. Maybe they want something else. That's okay. They can go ask and negotiate all of those things. Here you can see I've got both effort and business value allocated to these backlog items and bugs. And obviously, I can easily just go drag them around on the backlog. Now, I can hide things in progress, which is what I normally do by default. Because what happens when the team selects items, forecasts the items that they're going to do inside of a sprint, the team is taking those things from the product owner, and we'll see what we get at the end of the sprint. So I want to hide those things, because I don't really care about them once the team started them. I'll care about them at the end, but not in the middle. And it means that I can very easily, or hopefully very easily, turn off the forecast button, turn on the forecast button, and VSTS will nicely draw little lines where the amount of points in here add up to as close to 30 as it can get. And that's just an arbitrary number, 30. It actually defaults to 10. I've obviously changed it to 30. But if my team, if I look in here, the org took 103 story points last sprint. Don't worry that they didn't manage to deliver. It's a fake project. But if I'm going into sprint 2, maybe I'm looking at changing that to 100. And then I'm looking down my list and seeing sprint 4's kind of going to get to there. Where's sprint 5 going to get to? Sprint 6. Just to give me an idea. Helps me forecast. I use that word very specifically, forecast. Yeah. It's like the weather. It might change. It might change significantly. Was there a forecast of rain today? What was the percentage likelihood? It's going to be 60% rain. It rained. Well, it was 100%, but we didn't know that up front. So we've got this backlog. I'm going to turn forecasting off. That's a tool to use. I used to see product owners print out their backlog and then draw lines on it as they were adding it up. It's a lot easier. But we need that single backlog to be able to do that, single unified backlog. But here I'm rolling up to features. So if I go to features, I can get here's my list of features. Here's my priorities, my order for my features, which might be based on priority, might be based on value, may be based on this customer screaming a lot. That's okay. That's my prerogative as product management to order it any way I like. And I can go into this item, and I can open out, and I can see, well, this item set is new, but one item's already been committed by a team. I know it uses the word committed. I use the word forecast. I just translate the tool says committed because it's based on the old Scrum guide. And I've got 2 items that I've already looked at and approved and put on a team's backlog to go look at and break down. So this item, this feature is not actually new. It is currently in progress. So I'm going to save and close that. And now I can see that that item is in progress, and that's maybe something I'm going to go look at a higher level. Does that make sense? My data wasn't up to date. That's going to happen. Just deal with it when you find it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay.
Can you prioritize in here, and will that change the PBIs?
So yes, you can prioritize in here, although my mouse is doing something weird, but I can drag it and reprioritize it.
Will that pull those PBIs?
No, it will not, and I would not expect it to, nor would I want it to. I might have a different person prioritizing this backlog. I am an executive who looks at feature level. I'm ordering my features, that's my intent. I'm going to talk to the product owner and say, this is my intent for when we want the features, and the product owner might look at that intent and then order the backlog items using that as an extra piece of information along with everything else they already know, including talking to the team and what's physically viable.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah.
What about if you open that out, you can see PBIs?
Yep.
Can you change the priority of those PBIs?
Not in this view. So if I try and, oh, yes, indeed I can. This is the problem with a product that's delivered regularly to production, is there's features you didn't know were there that you've asked for that then appear in the product. Just to note that the VSTS team delivered to production every 3 weeks, and I've missed one deployment in the last 2 years. And it was this Christmas, and the whole company, or the whole team had 2 weeks off at Christmas, and the product owner decided that they didn't make enough to bother shipping that sprint. And that was the only one they didn't do. So it was a choice, not forced into it by not having working software. So yes, you can. Yeah. And these features roll up, again, to epics. So I have a much fewer number of epics. So I have lots of backlog items that can fit in the sprint, fewer features that fit in a release, and even less epics, which are the strategic direction we're trying to achieve with the product. As you can see, if you spoke Latin, you would understand my strategic direction I'm trying to achieve here. And again, I can drill down all the way down. In fact, I can drill all the way down into the tasks, but I would never recommend that, because as a product owner, why do I care about the team's tasks? Okay. That's awesome. We've just talked about one team. That's how one team does portfolio management. But generally, you don't have portfolio management for just one team. You need multiple teams. So what I can do here is I have multiple teams already set up. Let me go into the admin system. And it's changed a little bit. If you're using TFS, this will be slightly different. And oh my goodness me, that's huge. That's better. So I have a number of teams set up. I've got the default team, which disappears. It just ends up being the same name as the team project at the top of the screen. And then I have a bunch of other teams. Each of those teams owns an area path. Okay? Then we can assign work items to an area path to allow us to compartmentalize. By default, if I create a new team and create the NDC Sydney team, it's going to create an area path, add it to the contributors, and I'll have that new area path automatically for that team. So if I put work in that area path, so on the work item, set it to that area path, it will appear on that team's backlog. If I don't set it to that, it will not appear on their backlog. Yeah, so that allows me to compartmentalize between teams. If I go to work, this is the bit that will be slightly different for you. I can choose what that team sees. So this team is an execution team. It's not a portfolio team. I might actually have multiple levels of portfolio teams. I have customers that do that as well. If I have multiple levels of portfolio teams, I might end up with a bunch of teams, roll up to a certain product. I've got OmniWorks and Multiplex that rolls up to an organizational portfolio, all in one team project. Okay, but I wanted to keep things a little bit simpler. So I just have one product in here. So this team doesn't really care about features. So I can go take that tick out. But they're not going to see that features tab. I don't really care to go in there. I want to look at PBIs. That's what I'm executing against. Okay? And if I go to iterations, this is the bit that's changed slightly. So if you've seen it before, it's a little different. I can say what iterations they can see. So this is a little bit annoying in the new interface. I know. I've asked the team, because we need to go all the way to 4 to get the next sprint, because 3 is the current sprint. There we go. Okay. So they're going to see those sprints on the left-hand side. If I don't want them to see sprint 1 anymore, I can just click on it and remove it. And they maybe don't care too much about history. You would maybe go a couple of sprints back, and then you don't care anymore, because that's the past. And nobody cares about the past. And then I look at iterations. And iterations, this team owns that iteration. Any work under that iteration will be shown by the team. If you're looking at the team's UI and you create a new work item, it will automatically go into that area path. Yeah, so if they create a new backlog item, which they might do if they're breaking stuff up, it's automatically on their backlog, and that kind of makes sense. But if I wanted to, I can add multiple things into that. They might look at NDC Sydney and months behind. So they'll then see stuff on their backlog that's in both of those areas. Okay? So at the team level, single team, It's super easy. It just sets up like that out of the box. We add our sprints. It's fine. But if I go to the root team, the default team, oh, no, it's not quite the default team. Let me click on the default team. Man, the internet's a little bit slower in this country than it is. Last time I did this demo was in Norway. I can say it again if you want. It's much faster when I'm at home as well. So if I go to areas, you can see this team, the default team, owns a single area path, which is the root, but they have a special modifier. Sub-areas are included. If I roll over it, go here, I can say either exclude sub-areas or keep sub-areas. If I exclude sub-areas, this team will only see stuff that is directly assigned to that area path and not any of the sub-area paths, so the teams. I might want to do that. I might want to just look at the view for a little while with just that smaller list. Or I might want to add it back and see everything that's going on. Does that make sense for everybody? Cool.
So what hat are you wearing now when you're doing this?
Which
hat are you wearing? Which role?
I'm product owner. Or, so who's configuring this?
Yeah. So what you're doing now, because I would have thought it was a bit unusual for a product owner to have sort of like admin access to be able to do all this stuff.
So it depends on your product owner, for sure. And in some companies I work with, product owner owns this. Some companies, yeah, you don't want the product owner to own that. And maybe an admin owns that, or a developer who's got the admin hat on to configure it for them, or they call me and I come and do it for them. It just depends.
We have like a Scrum Master developer kind of do this with the product owner.
Yeah, and if you've got that, but when you've got 70 teams, it's not really one team. Usually it might be the integration team, somebody on the next integration team that does this, somebody on your DevOps build team. In the big organization I work with, it's the DevOps build team that handle all of the admin. Okay, so I can now switch between teams. If I switch to my brand new team that I just created, which hopefully that won't take too long to open the window, and I go to my NDC Sydney team, we won't have features and epics because we turned them off. We do have sprint 3, but we don't have sprint 1. Only have sprint 4, that's the ones we specified, and we've got nothing in our backlog. Yeah? So if I now add something to my backlog, it's defaulted to not being in an iteration. It's still in the root iteration path, but it's inside the NDC Sydney team path. This is the NDC Sydney team, so it's adding to their backlog. But if I go to the root team, and let me find some stuff that's assigned to the root team, did that change? Yeah, let's just do those two things. I'm going to right click, edit. I need to type. Okay. Now I go to NDC Sydney, and those things, while they're on the master backlog in a particular place, are now on the team's backlog. So I can create a backlog for that team that they can then pull from in order to either do refinement or pull it into a sprint. Yes?
When you create an item on your sub-backlog, where does that go in terms of priorities in the main backlog?
So when I created, the question was when I created something on the team's backlog, where did it go on the parent backlog? Yeah, so it went right to the bottom. Would be the answer to that. It went right to the bottom because the product owner's not prioritized it, so where else should it go? Is it more important than other things? They've not determined that yet. But if I then, there's a little bit of a weirdness here now, because if I take that item and put it in there, it's now between those items on the parent backlog, but where between those items? Well, somewhere. Yeah. Every work item gets a big number in the ordered list, so you're not changing a whole bunch of stuff when you drag things around. And it will just pick a number in between. I think it just divides it by 2, does some sort of modular thing so you don't get clashes, and sticks it in there. So it will just be somewhere between those 2 items, and the product will go, oh, what's this thing? Oh, I need to order that because that's something this team's added. I agree, and the TFS team have been looking at ways to solve that. One way to solve that is you're not allowed to see something on 2 backlogs, but that then makes it difficult to do some kinds of work. If everybody knows about this, then you can mitigate for it and agree as a team, as a Nexus, just as a team, a Scrum team, let the team decide how do you want to figure that out. I usually say let the Nexus decide how they want to figure it out, agree with the product owner, and how they're going to deal with that. Yeah? We can just not drag and drop at this level and let the product owner do it, or whatever makes sense. So if I go to one of my other teams that have a little bit more on it, should have a little bit more on it. There we go. And a whole bunch of stuff committed by the team, broken down into backlog items. Now I can open that item and I can gain context because this item has a parent, yeah, which has a parent, and I can see those things in here. If I turn parents on at the team level, even though I don't have the backlogs listed to go in and order them for features and for epics, I can see that this backlog item is part of this epic, but it's not assigned to my team. If it's a square with an empty bit in the middle, it's not on your team. Does that make sense? Cool. So you get some visibility, not just down from the product management level, but from the team looking up, how do I get context? And there's probably other things that are associated with this item. So if I open it up, I can go in and see it's got 4 PBIs as children, and maybe one of them's assigned to another team. So maybe I have to go speak to that team because they've committed to it in the current sprint, and we're both working on the same feature, and we need to organize that work. That's the integration work we've just got to figure out. Okay. So if I click on the sprint, I don't have anything in that sprint. Let me go back to the backlog and put some stuff in there. One of the things that we need to be able to see from a product management perspective is what's in the sprint backlog. If each team's doing something independently, we can't go get a holistic view of all the things that are currently underway. Maybe the integration team, the Nexus integration team needs a look at that. Your DevOps team needs to understand what's going on. So if I drag some of these items into 3, kind of arbitrarily, I know, but demo, from Scrum Dogs, and then I change over to our NDC, and they're going to do some of these items. When I look at my sprint as the NDC team, I only see the things that I see in my sprint. That's what I want to see. Yeah, the stuff I'm going to go work on. So if I go look at my boards, if I go look at my Kanban, I look at my Scrum boards, I look at my capacity, it's all about me, my team. And I can create dashboards for just my stuff.
So would you normally give those child teams read access to the parent levels as well?
There's not really a way to easily control those permissions, have agreements. It's generally not about enforcing permissions, because if you're an agile team and you've got to deliver work within 10 days, and the only thing that's blocking your ability to go to get that thing and do that thing that you need to do, if you're blocked from doing that and the person who can do that for you is not available, you're not going to meet your 10-day deadline. So I wouldn't try and control permissions at that level. I would control it with culture, with an expectation. Is it, let me go back to the Scrum values. Is it respectful of the product owner to go muck about with their backlog? No. Yeah, so I wouldn't expect teams to do that because I'm going to create that culture of understanding. We want to do the right thing. We're all held accountable for delivering working software at the end of the iteration, and if we do that, that might get in the way of that, so then we're kind of broken. So if I go to that root team, the default team that's my portfolio team, I'll see all of the things. So I've got NDC Sydney and Scrum Docs. So then I can easily create reports. I can create dashboards for the current sprint, everything that's going on. And Microsoft nicely creates some default backlog items, not backlog items, boards like this sprint 3. If I'm on the root team, it's showing me all 6 things that are in the backlog, not just the things assigned to my team or those 2, because I can see everything. So, is there anything else you want to see in there that goes to this organizing the hierarchy? Okay. Oh, wait, all the way to start. Okay. So we kind of need 3 things to be able to do, well, we kind of need 4 things to do well. We need Scrum. We need engineering excellence. We need the values and principles of Scrum to adhere to. Some guides so that we don't do some of those things that people do, and put them all together to create professional Scrum teams, and then we can start scaling. Because if you try and scale before you have professional teams, it's going to be a car crash. It's going to be a bus crash, not just a car crash. Yeah, derail the trains. If you're interested, there's 3 useful books in this space. It's a little bit old, but Professional Application Lifecycle Management with Visual Studio 2013. I was involved in that, which is why I put it on there. I kind of have to self-promote a little bit. The reason, all of the ALM stuff that it talks about, the DevOps things that it talks about, are all still valid regardless of version of the product. We just decided not to write another version of the book because the product is moving too quickly to actually keep up with it. The book's no use anymore. Books are no value at that level, at the tools level. Phoenix Project, has anybody read it? Yes. Read the Phoenix Project if you've not read it. It's an awesome read. It's not a perfect scenario, not a perfect solution, but it does give you some ideas and help define the problem. And Software in 30 Days by Ken, he talks about something called the Scrum Studio. Anybody heard of the Scrum Studio? Yep, everybody's coming to a realization is if you've got a large enterprise company, it's actually too difficult to change. It's too difficult to change the culture of your organization, especially when you have a large hierarchy and it's not just software you build. You've got a bank. How do you go change the other stuff that's going on to make sure that you can be agile, because it has to be top down? Scrum Studio is about kind of creating a new company that is all agile. You move one team in, they start servicing some of the business need. As you build demonstrable trust in that team's delivering software, bring more people into the Scrum Studio, and they kind of work as a profit center for that organization. I've got a number of customers that have moved towards that model, and it's much more successful. One of them was a travel company that used software. Now they have a profit center instead of a cost center, and they build better software. Any questions? Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and hopefully you can take something back to the rest of your organization. I think the slides will be available for you guys. I know it's the last session of the day and everybody wants to kind of go on the boat trip. Yay. In the rough seas, in the 40-mile-an-hour winds. I'm not looking forward to it. Thank you very much, guys.